Alright, bearing investigation, consideration, operation, condition, bearing damage of the root cause of the nails damage failure matrix. Bearing investigation, this is an ever encrypted domain with a higher level extent with the safety interval with the traction motor gear with the valve, the bearing condition for the field with the condition motoring shall be applied with the complementary method of the bearing investigation undertaken of the railway main with the personal bearing manufacturer most give the intermediate investigation condition of the grease and oil can may be easily done with completing the dismount investigation with the bearings. This can help with the establishment of the bearing condition indirectly with limited for 3 minutes with completing each other with the aim to enhance the reliability and improve the schedule maintenance interval with the implement corrective actions when needed. Consideration roller bearings are extremely vital component with the traction motor gearbox with the railway vehicle with a large number of the fact of the need for the conservative with the appropriate bearing with the application for the complete information for the not available the oil operation conditions made to differ from the specification. Wear and tear might change with the operation condition. Also, use the vehicle with might change with the overtime. All of these can influence the roller bearings with the life damage of the bearing with the occur with the each other forcing the poor lubrication damage of the bearings can be delayed with the catastrophic failure with the damaged rotor and stairs with the traction motor gear wheels with the gearbox within case of the tracking and operational services had the interrupted the power services with the have a special the maintenance shop for the repairs on plane with the action with the color for the transportation standstill with the require with the law with the effort gear with the need special pair part of the introduction AC propulsion systems calculated with the brush one with the DC traction motor with the need usually these components have much short with the safe with the lab with the lubrication group with the bearing with the tool day traction motor made with the intervals main focus with the require with the grease light with the leaving bearing conditions for the in the future with the will becoming even more importance to ensure the high reliability resulting long maintenance interval within the comparison of oil lubricated gearbox minus less debating with the maintenance and intermediate with the oil investigation eventual replacement can be done relatively cost effective without the need of the dismount of the propulsion system. Operating condition the calculating a bearing life with the detail with a different chapter that here is the look for the final bearing with the large number of the fact that we consider the following manufacturers influence the section and type of the dimension, precision, fit, clearance, cage, heat, treatment, lubrication, sealing, electrical current passes, mounting, dismounting. Selecting the appropriate bearing application for this only the first step of the achieve the reliable equipment performance. This is if all of the needs relatively above the factors say of the factory remember that would be expected with the bearing life to reach with the calculated life. Unfortunately, the number of the K for the gear is quite hypothetical. This often sometimes something occurs to prevent ideal operation condition bearings might get damaged and life impaired. Bearing damage theoretically would be the bearing for the class 5 the bearing damage based on the primary root cause of the failure and practice with the however the most often overlay with a different failure cause with which is the combination can be lead with a significant bearing damage such as excessive wear caused by the contaminated lubrication because of the inadequate sealing performance, early fatigue with small spells, which can usually large spell can everything in the traction motor failure with the operating with the cracked ring of the rolling elements. Because of the possibility there are multiple cases of failure bearing with the damage investigation quite complex and difficult. Should the calculated life explained with the bearing and the assumption of the bearing is appropriate with the application of the bearing's high quality and has no inherent defects mentioned associated with the complex such as shaft, the housing sheet with the appropriate bearing is amount with correctly the appropriate lubrication and the refined quantities of available of the bearing and the bearing arrangement properly with the protected sheet with the proper bearing arrangement match for the operation condition recommended with the maintenance to perform the detailed inspection of the traction motor bearing with the first step of the remanufacturing process of the traction bearing unit was then for the 12 year with the cover the 1.5 million kilometers heavy locomotive service was very minor with the parts being used after the manufacturing. Alright, show the poor sealed bearing system going and red arrows to the inadequate lubrication, poor lubrication system, poor insulation, electrical current going inadequate lubrication. The red arrows going the earlier inadequate lubrication, electrical current passes the raceway damage. Raceway damage goes wear successful, serve the distress, polluting and spalling, and back to pool wearing sealing system goes from blue to the adequate. Poor cage performance and wear, inadequate lubrication blue to poor cage performance and wear. Main problem red, blue possible problem. Alright, this shows the type, precision, clearance, heat treatment, and sealing, dimensions, fit, gauge, and lubrication mountings, the operation conditions, bearing specifications. Cylindrical roller bearing even the traction motor was 10 kilometers of operation, was only in 10 kilometers of operation. Alright, failure with the cage roller assembly with a deep root ball bearing with a traction motor of the motor. Progressive stage of the damage, initial damage may come with some of the fatigue with and wear with the subsequently failure with the crack of the bearing can occur with the off of the driving the bearing with the run hot block with the motor with gearbox with the wheel shape with the rotor with the shape that can be seriously damage requires extensive repair with the cave with the expensive with the action for the necessary with the move of the railway vehicle with the run of the track with the next depot with the delay operation practical exam with the here with the practical exam with the field with the traction motor bearing failure with the curve with the during the heavy operation on a ramp in an alpine region with the standard locomotive with the block with a single track with the head to be rescued with the secure vessel transportation neck with the depot with difficult time with consuming the delay level of the train with the fail half day. Later on, the traction motor was rebuilt with a railway maintenance shop with a new rotor shop with a new state of the rotor winding. In fact, the only traction motor housing remained within most cases. Unfortunately, damage of the kind cannot be repaired. Condition monitoring can help detect the damage very early stage of the impounding phase with some of the typical traction motion, gearboxing, and bearing area investigation described most cases the found in the excavator with the Railway Technical Handbook, Volume 1, Chapter 6, ISO 15243. Shows the fatigue and subsurface initiated fatigue, surface initiated fatigue, wear, abrasive wear, adhesive wear, corrosion, moisture corrosion, friction corrosion, fretting corrosion, faults, brittling, electric corrosion, excessive voltage, current leakage, and plastic deformation, overload, indentation of debris, indentation of handling, fracture cracking, force fracture, fatigue cracking, thermal cracking, your root cause analysis then commonly understood the cause of the damage with the result of the certain character of the form of the chain of the character of the failure with the mechanism result of the certain failure mode with the pattern with the form of the damage observed with the one possible to determine the root of the cause of the failure. Much of the work that has been done in the ISO to define the different failure modules will classify them as the result of the ISO 15243 standard the first published in 2004 locating the bearing failure of the whole 6 main failure modes that can be observed but that can be further classified with the number of the sub of the model with the classification based on the 3 major factors. Damage chain that occurred with the during the trip of the insides with the bearing has light left the factory character the form of the chain, but the appearance of that can be attributed to the particular case, but the classified visible features, including the use of the non-destructive equipment, the magnifying such with the microscope, the fatigue, the subsurface initiative, the fatigue, the deterioration method, the cover, the cycling load, both of the built-up surface adjusting underneath the raceway surface, and the ultimate resulting in the decay of the material with the crack in the initiative, with the propagated the underneath the surface of which, when they come to the surface with the falling occurs. Surface initiated fatigue of the result of the from inadequate lubrication with the roll of the lubricant with the build-up of the oil film with the separately with the move of the part under the poor lubrication. For example, the due contamination of inadequate viscosity metal contact over the surface of the asperities, peak shears over each other, the result of the stress of the material fatigue of the final result of the micro spall of the initially therefore the main shining surface becomes the surface of roughness reduced the process continues the surface becomes dull and breaks up. Shift the spalling cause of fatigue and also subsurface initiated initiated fatigue. And show the abrasive wear on a steel cage with a tapered roller bearing with wear. The wear typical with the curve with the contact zone with the moving the body with the wear must be the often the able to hold with the circle of the James Jamaica. Go with the wear to cover the early state of the bearing operates for the variance of the wear can occur with the air over the brace for the heat of the wear with the curve with the doing different speed with the wear in contact for the cover with the speed difference for the cinematic speed up of the acceleration deceleration. Abrasive wear, the discover the abrasive of the particle of the lubricant with the contamination particle with the outside of the inside with the example of the wear particle with the gear, the abrasive particles over the wear out with the strip of the race waves of the rolling elements and also the metal case normally result of the dull surface of the how with the abrasive of the particulars for the fine and the however the cement adjustment and polishing and the effect of the might occur the mirror like surface of the often inadequate absence of the sealing arrangement result of the contamination entering the bearing cabinet lubrication analysis might reveal the original contamination will help which can help find the solution of the problem. Show the flash over the dew, the polishing of the plastic, the deformation, surface the asperities, the abrasive, the polishing work over the mirror-like surfaces, the welded material. Abrasive important the difference. Not too light loads can cover the sliding, resulting in the very high temperatures of smearing. Adhesive wear with occurs mainly in the contact surface of the subject of the light load, the poor lubrication condition with the important speed difference resulting in sliding with the rolling elements. One example of the passing rolling over the unloaded zone with the load zone with the rolling elements of the loose of the speed with the unloaded zone, the accelerated return load zone can also result in the breakdown of the lubrication film with the sliding with the heat development, the possibility of material transfer of the rolling element, the raceway with the ice with the earlier stage appearing with the shining surface quickly in terms of the dull surface with more than or more or less smeared material, the adhesive wear with the wearing of the inner ring of the racer with the cylinder roller bearing. Or show the moisture corrosion, principle of moisture corrosion on the inner ring of the elliptical roller bearing, fretting corrosion over the bore and bearing of the fretting corrosion of the bore bearing with the resulting from an inadequate fit. Your corrosion, moisture corrosion, in contrast with the damage or problem of the corrosion, can be occur with the pressure with the deeply with the material with the calv with the shear with the bearing, jam with the corrosion can occur with the presence of the water with the corrosion, the liquid with the moisture, also with high humidity in the air touching raceway with the fingers and leave at the top of the corrosion. Therefore, the important to have the goods protected from the corrosion, often half the during with the standstill with the invisible corrosion, the make of the rolling element, the distance with the deep of the sea with the rusted leads, early bearing damage, fretting the corrosion, the root of the cover, the occurring micro movement, the half of the two low surface, the mostly friction cover, the erosion occur between the bearing outside of the diameter, the housing between the boring with the shaft of the micro movements of the mainly cover the cycle of the U of the roller elements path of the inadequate shaft hit with the shaft thing with the infrared perfections contact shift with the cover of the adder celebrate the eye or current of the air comes within the up and unprotected strip of the axle with the progression of the corrosion form the oxide of the iron oxide with the large volume of the pure steel with the develop of the middle growth of the high strip of the even bearing race where they can lead with the premature fatigue of threading with the corrosion can easily lead the ring cracking. Alright, your false brindle exhaustive friction corrosional damage of the roller elements erased by the contact with the micro move with the Brazilian elastic the contact with the cylindrical vibrations of the ring stationary low with the damage of the pier with the rolling element pitch depending on the intensity of the vibration lubrication condition of the low of the combination with the corrosion wherever the curve of the former shallowing depression from the race for the normal the vibration result of the local breakdown through the protective lubrication film of the metal contact corrosion strip of the bridge wherever the appearance of therefore you the dull often discolored sometimes the reddish hue but the occurrence of the corrosion occasionally with the depression can be very shiny and fall with the brindle damage result of the cylindrical cavity of the ball bearings lines of the roller bearings falls brindle damage of the outer of the ring tape of the roller bearing falls brindle damage occur with the standstill of the character of the damage of the rolling elements distances. So excessive voltage, ball bearings raceway with large spoils, fluting in the washboard with the raceway cut with the passage damaging electrical circuit, outer ring raceway, the deep groove with the ball bearing flush, fluting washboard raceway cut with the passage with the damaged electrical current, and then electrical erosion, the feature with the electrical erosion, profit electrical current prevention, insulated with the bearing solution, and scope with the hybrid bearings mentioned in Chapter 4, page 104 and 106. The few illustration electrical erosion damages are shown. Plastic deformation. The permanent deformation occurs with the ramp of the yield of strength of the material exceed with the overload with the mounting force with the transmitted over the rolling elements the result of the dents with the rolling elements for the distance the axle displays. Overload the dents result of the wrong mounting with the overload with the low quantity quickly led with the spall with the indentation from the debris with the debris destroyed with the geometry lead with the surface of the initiated fatigue of the area behind it. Indentation of the debris and soft particles, and then we'll read from the overload result of from the static shock load with the lead with the plastic deformation of the degree with the recommended depression rolling element of the distance one mounting pursued with the reduce with the reaching with the problem of the flying with the mounting with the force with the wrong ring therefore produced with the shock load over the rolling elements. Indentation from the debris with the result of the form particle they have gained entry into the bearing of the roll with the raceway with the rolling on with the size and shape of the dent depending on the nature of the particle with the raceway geometry with the damage destroyed with the lubrication repaired with the stress of the ride with the surface with the fatigue of the premature of the spalling with the surface of the indentation with the handling and indentation for the handling can occur with the Julian bearing with the group of the hub with the sharp with the object with the also bearing with the also you with the handle with the care although made with the highest quality so seal localized overload with the from the dropping of the bearing of the might dam with the surface with the making the bearing unserviceable. Show the indentation from handling, damage of the inner ring with a cylindrical rolling bearing damage due to the assembly. Alright, fractured, force fracture, crack the flange with a cylindrical roller bearing inner range or due to impact low, force fracture, ring in ring with cylindrical roller bearing, force fracture, bad housing, C with a finally resulting in cracked outer ring, force fracture through excessive drive up, and fatigue fracture with a cylindrical roller bearing outer ring. Your fracture and cracking. Fracture and cracking occurs when the ultimate tensile strength of the material exceeds force fracture for the basic called the strength of the concentrating except for the material tensile strength with the local impact and over a strength for two common cut with the rough framing the one with the bearing being melted mounted and dismantled down with hammer blows applied with the hard and close cheap with the seal with the game with the ring and knives cut with the formation fine correct with the result of the pay with the ring break off with the bearing of the put with the strip of the exhibit the drive of the tape achieve with the sleeve with the result of the tensile string with the hope stress of the rising the ring for the produce the crack with the bearing in is input into operation fatigue. The start of the fatigue of strength with an extreme with the depending with the crack initiated will propagate with the whole ring and the cracks through the fracture of the kinnick that has been used with the leading in the hip hop high hoop stress through the combined hertzing and hoop stresses can be leading to premature fatigue through the cracking in ring. Thermal cracking can occur with the two surfaces heavily against each other. The friction heat with the developed cover the cracks generally at the right angle with a sliding direction. Alright, damage and failure matrix. They're looking for the damage and often the damage of the classified as one by the ISO damage module. The difficulty, however, might be determined the root with the color damage of the failure matrix. Which must be shown cal with the belief of the links damage with an operating condition. Whether no one of the operating condition might with the root cause of the table does show the damage that can occur. The damage failure markers of operation condition, very moment flex, lubrication mounting, and other Failure modes: fatigue, subsurface expelling, flaking, subsurface expelling, wear, abrasive wear, scratches, scores, adhesive smearing, hot runs, corrosion, moisture corrosion, fretting, corrosion, faults, brittle, electrical erosion, craters, fluting, plastic deformation, depression, debris, inundation, nicks, gouges, fracture, cracking, force fracture, fatigue, fracture, thermal cracking, damage area, raceway seats, radial and seats axle abutments. Chapter 8: Sensors.